Hey everybody, Martial Arts X World here, and let's do a martial arts real talk. The difference between martial arts and self-defense. Now the purpose of this is really because I've noticed a lot of people will say, what's the difference between learning a martial art and learning a self-defense? And really and truly it kind of breaks down between four things. The difficulty of the techniques you learn, the conditioning required to complete certain techniques, the applications of the techniques you learn, and the situations and how you handle them. Uh, Moving straight along, difficulty. Martial arts depend. Difficulty of different martial arts depend on the style and the technique you're trying to go for, such as the Taekwondo straight sword kick, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu's aerial scissor takedowns, um, Russian Sambo's knee grabs, Muay Thai's insane kicking power. Just all of them depend, the difficulty depends on which martial art you practice, and even more specifically what your style stands for. Usually progressive, going from easy to difficult. So what that means is that the techniques you learn when you first start out, you'll always be learning the basics, but as you get more up there, you'll be learning some relatively long chains of techniques, how to apply them differently and such, and it's a slow burn process, but you get better as you go. With self-defense, the phrase KISS comes to mind because it's keep it simple, stupid. You need to keep these techniques very short, very quick, and because for a self-defense technique, you're assuming that you don't have much time to go through the motions and think your way through the problem. This should be a technique that you can whip out relatively instantaneously. It doesn't have to look pretty, it doesn't have to be very nice, but it does have to get you it does have to be able to help you distract yourself from a situation that is very bad. So that's kind of where the difficulty goes. Conditioning. Martial arts has, no surprise, it's a consistent training to maintain and improve your physical status. What that means is that with martial arts, you have to do, you'll see, everybody loves the training montages where you see them do push-ups, lift weights, squat, holding forms. There are many different conditioning techniques you have to utilize for martial arts because your body has to be up to snuff. I always see people try and perform flying kicks, and they're like, why don't I have as much air as that guy? Well, that guy has better leg muscles. He's conditioned a little bit better for it. So if you want to match that, you're going to have to train and condition just as equal. With self-defense, though, it's different. Self-defense techniques, it's not that they don't require conditioning, but for self-defense, this is supposed to be able to be utilized by most individuals. So it's assumed that you'll need little to none conditioning, practically no conditioning whatsoever, as these techniques will also probably rely more on manipulating joints, which don't take too much strength anyway. But again, with martial arts, basically what I'm trying to say with conditioning is that as a self-defense technique, a normal person should be able to use the technique. As a martial artist, if you're using a self-defense technique, your conditioning should make it significantly easier to utilize this technique. Applications. This is a big one. With martial arts, applications fits to match a variety of situations, and it's reliant on the user to kind of figure out what you need to do. What I mean by that is, in beginning forms of many styles, I'll see them perform a low block, and students, at least younger students, will always say, I don't understand the purpose of this. Now, the purpose of each form, I always tell people, is that if you want to train really effectively, but your teacher hasn't taught you anything new, try and understand the purpose of each of your technique. Don't just understand it's a block. Understand what you're blocking. Understand why you're doing it this way. And then kind of start trying to put it in context. If you can get a partner, have pantomime the actions so you understand, no, I've been doing it wrong. It should be more like this so it performs better. When you perform a strike, understand where you're aiming. A lot of people just strike the air, but when you actually visualize a target, you'll understand that no, I'm striking the solar plexus, or I'm going for one of the ribs, or I'm actually aiming for the throat. Understanding where you're aiming makes more sense then. With self-defense, the techniques are more simple, and they can be adapted very similarly to martial arts, but one of the things about it is that most people who just rely on self-defense techniques really don't think about adaptation, so it requires a little bit more work. And one of the things about martial arts versus that is that with martial arts you learn forms and you learn techniques. Techniques should be able to be utilized anytime, which forms are just patterns of techniques, which means you can change and switch on the fly as you need. But with self-defense, as I said before, a lot of them concentrate on joint manipulation, which is very efficient and it's one of my personal favorites. But at times, you can't always manipulate a joint as easily as you'd like to, and you do need to have a decent striking power to loosen up your opponent. So while you can adapt a self-defense technique, they're not like a panacea technique. Because you learn a wrist grab, it's not going to always equal out unless you have the rest of the know-how how to manipulate and use the body effectively for it. Moving on to situations. Martial arts can be executed. This is like my favorite part of this, right? By the way, martial arts can be executed as the attacker or the defender. It serves to provide more options. All martial arts are, from the very beginning, were systems of fighting. How can we attack? How can we defend? What can we do in these situations of danger? And in that regard, it's very important. Many martial artists do learn how to be a defender or an attacker, so they learn how to counterattack and choose to shoot their own moves as they need to. Which, as I said before, provides a really good base for a wide variety. You might see someone with a knife, so you know you have to deal with the knife, but the ways you can deal with the knife, depending on your style, depending on the situation, your environment, it can be very quick. You can very quickly understand, hey, alright, he's holding it kind of poorly, maybe I can get a grab off on it. Or, okay, I'll dodge the first blow and I'll strike the forearm and then I'll kick knee. Or just a variety of different situations. While with self-defense, it works a little differently. Self-defense is used more, it's self-defense. That's the big thing about it. You're not going to be the attacker in most of these situations. So for that situation, these techniques are usually more rough because most people don't practice these techniques. Even in the military, I've heard some of my friends who are in the military, and they'll state, yeah, I learned the hand-to-hand stuff, but like, why would I need that when I have a gun? And guns are cool. I'm not gonna say guns aren't cool, but the thing about it is that because of this, when the situation arrives, they're viewed. So a lot of time when I see people have like a very rough technique, it's not that it's a poor technique, but that it's very rough. It's not very smooth. It worked under this situation, but against somebody else, it looked like it had a higher chance of failing actually than helping them out. It seems like they use too much muscle to get through the technique rather than actually letting the technique work on its own basis. But again, that also goes back to the reason of the technique is to provide a chance to escape safely. Whether it's versus a knife, versus a gun, versus a rifle, versus just an open-handed attacker, if you have the ability to use a self-defense technique, you're probably not actually going to try and kill the person or like fight them. You're going to try and get away. Your instinct should be to not try and finish the confrontation, just try to get out of there. With martial arts, I'm not saying martial arts can beat a gun or a rifle, people, calm down. But what I am saying is, well, in certain ranges it can, but that's for a different video. But what I am saying is that if, for instance, you see someone might have a gun but they haven't drawn it yet, you can execute an attack first. That's what the important part of the situations element is. It's being able to handle a situation sometimes before it starts. In conclusion, I would say that martial arts are just systems of fighting. They exist to provide the user with effective ways to just fight, pure and simple. While self-defense are techniques centered around providing you a chance to get out of there. It's something that, martial arts is something that requires a lot of time, effort, and training. I've only been training a few years, but I do know I train every day of those few years. When I'm not doing physical training, it's a very long, arduous mental process. There's a lot of small things. Even every time I look, I might videotape myself every once in a while, and I'll watch some of my techniques, and I'll be like, no, this is piss poor. I need to get better at this. While with self-defense, you can teach pretty much any age range this, and it can provide them a decent chance. Not a great chance, but it might up their chance of survival 1-2%. Thank y'all. That's all from Martial Arts X World. See y'all back here for another Real Talk eventually.